Good Lord. What an absolutely bonkers 12 hours, 16. The social media and the internet has just been under. I've just been watching it, staying up really late and seeing the events unfold. And I don't know, compared to make a video on it. I don't really want to try to tie it to Final Fantasy because I guess in the sense that a big draw to Final Fantasy for me, I'm sure for a lot of you, is moral questioning. Of course, it's always easier to do moral questioning on fictional characters and scenarios, and some of those are often very black and white. Who the villains are, who the heroes are, what the evil in the scenario is. Of course, storytelling and Final Fantasy has got better at making it a bit more nuanced and grey, but it's still nowhere near the complexity of real life. And we've just had a very real life, very visceral, fucking shocking scenario with Charlie Kirk's assassination that just happened yesterday. Like I'm sure a lot of you at this point, especially if you're on X, where that platform really don't censor much of nothing. And even if you didn't intentionally go out to see the shooting happen, I'm sure like me, you saw it anyway. It sort of came up and you didn't click away, or your curiosity got the better of you. Genuinely horrifying. That shook me up like big time, man. I had to call some friends. I had to chat for an hour or two. Like, outside of anything that the discourse is turning into now, right wing, left wing, who Charlie Kirk was, the general broad political discourse and tribalism and warfaring. Right, remove all of that for a second. Seeing a person, another human being, go down like that, I mean, if it doesn't hit you and touch you on some level, you've lost a bit of your humanity. And yeah, the same as images coming out of Gaza, it evokes that same feeling, or at least it should. It should, on a very gut human level, inspire a degree of sadness and natural compassion and natural empathy, I believe. And that's what I felt yesterday. Not just because he was also a person, but a person that I have watched tens, I would probably not hundreds, but tens of hours of his content for years at this point. They're not just Charlie Kirk takedowns, not just because I'm a left-leaning individual. So everything that Charlie spoke about, I ideologically opposed, almost from top to bottom. A few commonalities, but less than there were more. And I won't watch him just for the rage baiting takedowns. I would watch his channel, his side of events. I'll do this with many right wingers. I think every individual, so that they don't live in an echo chamber, needs to do this. If you are engaged with these topics, you need to swim in the opponent's waters and see things genuinely from their perspective, how they're narrating it, how they're auditing, how they're forming and fashioning their thoughts, what their thought processes are that's got them to the conclusions they are at, and to watch that without some, rage baity takedown, owned, pwned kind of overlay or commentary. And Charlie Kirk was really that guy that I would watch, entire hour-long segments of fairly regularly. So even just on that level, that you know as much as what he showed us, and I've heard people like Carl Kalinske. He's a political commentator I really like. He's debated Charlie. They don't agree on virtually anything, but Carl yesterday said who Charlie was on camera versus off camera, different people. That would be the case except for maybe a select few, the vast majority, 98% of people are different to the persona that they put out or how they show up on camera. And Carl said off camera, yeah, nice guy, great guy. And I think even through the lens of what I saw Charlie portraying in terms of his beliefs and his political views, great father and great husband. 2 kids and a wife who had to see that shit live. They were there. What I really wanted to add, for whatever 2 cents mine is worth, is this is a moment, a snapshot, like we've had numerous other snapshots, to have a moral discussion and to really set this as some kind of foundation to the principles in which we each individually operate in where this now goes going forward. Because I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that this is a super hot topic that is going to push or is currently pushing people in a myriad of directions. Left wing, right wing, across the board. And America, like the UK, like numerous countries in the world right now, we've got riots in Nepal. France is absolutely going ballistic. Spain, Italy, across the world, there is some genuinely terrifying, destabilizing unrest going on. And America is in that position as well. It is teetered on the brink of, at times, what feels like a total breakdown in the fabric of society. Even as far as like civil war mentality, that sounds exaggerative, but when you got troops and military getting deployed in blue states, when coming back to this Charlie Kirk scenario, a tremendous portion of the right leaning heavily into a vengeance mentality. This is a line too far. It's time for us to attack back. Democrats are the enemy of the state. They must be stopped at every cost. They fired the first shot. We're sure as hell going to be the ones who fire the last. Left-wing individuals who have absolutely nothing but condemnation for political violence. And they state it explicitly. This is the position of any reasonable, sane, normal, grounded human being. There is no place for political violence. No one should be shot and killed for expressing the views that they hold. And what's terrifying to me is that people want to ignore individuals who make that outright statement and coerce the conversation into, no, because you argued, refuted, massively stood in opposition, sowed some of the narratives against the right or against Charlie, like, you're the result of this. You caused this, and you're next. There's been a lot of threats thrown at left-wing commentators, and it's a genuinely terrifying time because these kinds of moments don't tend to happen in ones. They tend to come in multiples. And there's a lot going on right now to feed into the loop of that visceral hatred and bloodthirst, vengeance kind of mentality. Things like violence only ever comes from the left towards the right. There's never been literally people saying there's never been a time where it's been a right against a lefty. Like, political violence is only happening in one direction. Of course that's not true. You just go back to the June shootings, 2 Democrat senators, Congress people, in their homes, a lifelong MAGA activist, right-wing activist, MAGA, a lunatic, knocked on their doors with a mask, killed them, killed their wives, killed their kids, their dog. So of course, it's nonsense. And, you can then get into a debate of, well, who does it more? What was really frustrating to me, just like the attack that we saw of that young Ukrainian girl that's now being politicized for anti-immigration and narratives. Sometimes people just do crazy shit, and these crazy fuckers who do this heinous, disgusting, immoral evil, they only represent themselves. Sometimes that is all there is to it. Their entire race, or religion, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, it's not that. That's the enemy. It's not any of those. No, or they're just broad sweeping categorizations of, okay, well, everywhere he was a lefty, or there was a trans person, the man on the bus was black, so it's black people who are violent. But then you've got feminist groups saying, oh no, it's not about him being black, it's because he's a man against a woman. This is men being violent. Just taking singular actions of a deranged person and galvanizing it to become something so much infinitely larger. To do what? To create more of a volatile, hostile, toxic, actively dangerous social culture where things are more divided and people are being radicalized, polarized further towards the extremes. Like left and right wing extremism, political extremism, was so marginally small, and you had such a larger percentage of people who were just center, somewhere in the center. Yes, I might be left, I might be right, but the thing we have in common is that we're level-headed, sane human beings with critical thinking who can put things under nuance and have some kind of ethical consistency, some kind of view for the betterment and what the betterment of the world and social cohesion looks like. But that is quickly diminishing because we are, with each passing year, being fed nothing but extremism, extremist takes, hyperbole, rage bait, en masse, day in, day out. And with each year, people are becoming more infected by it. And the scenario with Charlie Kirk, because you got that coming from right-wingers and from the left-wingers, equally as deplorable. Good, I'm glad, glorifying it, laughing at it, saying that they salute the bullet that got him. He had it coming to him. I won't shed a tear. Bringing up things that Charlie himself had said. Things like a number of gun deaths happening every year was a worthwhile trade-off for having the Second Amendment, having guns in America. And people running that and saying, well, he's one of the statistics that he said he was happy to have every year, so he deserved it. Coming from people who are advocating for maybe not the complete banning of all guns, but at least, much, much more severe background checks, licensing procedures, banning of high capacity magazines, all those other more moderate rather than outright banning, gun law reforms. Like people who want that, so you are massively against gun violence, but because you're against it and this guy was for it, so against what you're against, you're like, I'm glad he got the gun violence. But then you've just surrendered your principle. You have just morally surrendered what is supposed to be a core value of you and what you advocate for. Another example of this, so I know I'm not very articulate, I just feel passionate as fuck about this. The topic of empathy. I believe that qualities like empathy and compassion need to not just be adopted individually and socially and brought into the social discourse, but it also needs to be at a governmental level, government policies. Yes, things like 16 million people not getting kicked off their health care. which will lead to innumerable amounts of death and suffering. Compassion being things like women having a choice of their own bodies, being able to have an abortion. Yes, especially if they've been an R-word victim of, say, their father. Now, these were things that Charlie Kirk did not agree with. He was pro-Trump and pro them all getting 16 million getting booted off their healthcare. He was pro-anti-abortion. He's been in pro-Palestine genocidal narratives. Like, all of these things I disagree with him on, because I do believe, and I've listened to enough of his content to see it's bereft of the kind of empathy that is required to build a better world. And one of those other quotes that people from the left are now springing up is, that's not me just speculating that Charlie Kirk didn't have empathy. Charlie Kirk himself said he does not believe in empathy. He doesn't believe in it. It's a made up, third age, liberal, fabricated word. Is basically dangerous and doesn't mean anything. So left-wingers who do believe in empathy then come out and use that quote and say, oh, because he said that, he won't be getting any empathy from me. But that's your standard. That's your belief. Like, why are you allowing your political opponent to determine how you show up in the world? If you surrender all of your principles just because somebody you don't agree with, or someone you see as a political enemy, or even further than that, you see as a true threat to democracy, like a genuine danger, who believed in some disgraceful things, even with that person, if you sacrifice your principles when it comes to that person, well, then your principles are weak. They don't have any foundation to them. I think I did that video the other day with the Dalai Lama. I did a video on compassion and him saying, in the context of the Chinese who massacred, brutalized, genocided the Tibetans, that it's your enemy that is the greatest test of your compassion, showing it even for them. There might be people on the right who I believe, if they had their way, they would happily destroy my life, my well-being, my freedom of speech, my independence, my autonomy. That doesn't mean I wish the same for them. No, even though they wish it for me, I wish for them to be able to have a good life, to be able to have a home, to be able to have a family, to be able to have fair and reasonable opportunity, a good salary, to be able to voice their opinions freely, to have the same protections and privileges that I have. I want that for them as well. Even if they wish me harm for the political views that I hold, I don't wish them harm for the political views that they hold. Because, yeah, if you go, well, then they wish it on me because of my views, so I'm going to wish it back. Well, then you are no different. And enough people need to occupy this position, I believe, for Charlie Kirk's death to mean something. To mean something valuable. Because if you think there's value to be had in more tribalism, more political warfaring, for right-wingers to now go out and massacre left-wing political commentators, or for left-wingers to use this moment to dance on a man's grave who just died, that level of visceral toxicity is exactly why he's just been shot. The problem that everyone needs to realise is that the people who stand to gain the most from all of these subjects being at the centre and the focus of everyone's outrage, the people who love that most are exactly what the top of the ticket issues are. The top of the ticket issue isn't trans people or men going to women's bathrooms. It's not how many immigrants are coming over on the boat. It's not abortion. It's not sexual orientation. It's not arguing endlessly about racial issues, which race is more violent than the other, which religion. The top of the ticket issue is class warfare and wealth inequality. Billionaires and corporation oligarchs monopolizing to extreme measures That is the main issue. And all the while we're focused on fighting endlessly on these small issues and pretending that, and when I say small, I'm not saying that they are small, because they're not, but they are not top of the ticket. And all of it is the distraction that stops any real progress being made, I believe. All the while, the corrupt elites who, regardless of who sat in the country's governing chair, play both sides, benefit either way. Strong-arming and enforcing every policy, completely taking over the democratic process, or actually just turning the democratic process into a meaningless farce. We're all here thinking our vote means something, that we have democracies, but if anyone's been keeping any kind of track of how things are going in these Western nations, democracy isn't real. Here in the UK, we had Labour, Keir Starmer, and presented all of his political agenda and what he'd be doing. As soon as he's got into power, he hasn't lived up to a single one of them. Not a single one. In fact, I saw an article come out the other day that basically said the UK's Labour government right now is the most underperforming in terms of point-by-point policies that they said they would do versus what they have done historically in the entire country's history. Every single piece of it was a bullshit lie that they haven't enacted on. So what the people voted for, they got into power and just done completely the opposite. So it's not democracy. When politicians can be bought and paid for, then come on stage and completely lie with no repercussion, with no legal recourse, that's where I really think there needs to be an additional layer. Not only do we need to move money from politics, not only do we need to really close the buddy-buddying, not only do we need to stop giving tax breaks to these elite corporations and individuals, not only do we need to do redistribution of wealth, we need to in some way make it criminally liable to stand up and lie to an entire nation and get into power via a lie. There isn't any other career or job in the world where you can go and you can lie that brazenly about your qualifications, your capabilities, your background, and get away with it. Especially in fields like government is, where people's lives are on the line. How many doctors can go up and just lie about their qualifications? How many doctors can just go and operate or do a medical procedure on a patient and then lie about what they just did? Or fudge the facts, twist the details, say you did that when you actually did that, and then that person dies because of it. You would be held criminally liable. So how can we have that kind of standard for all of these other roles and jobs in the world, but not for the highest jobs in the land? Same with criminal convictions. You can't get a job at some fast food restaurants, perfume shops, clothing shops. You can't. There aren't fucking malls that hire some people if they got a criminal conviction. Minimum wage fucking jobs if you have one, but you can hold the highest office in the land. There needs to be some sort of higher standard and account. And it drives me nuts because outside of that, and sorry, I know I got really political, but no, Charlie Kirk was that figure. He was that individual. And for as much as I absolutely vehemently disagreed on almost every single thing he said, the thing that makes me really sad about it is at least he was that person who, even through the lens of his views and his beliefs, that he did pour his life, he did dedicate his time, he did master his craft. I do think that mastery, well, I'll get onto that in a minute, what I think that mastery looked like, but he showed up in the world and he put it out there. And regardless of me having disagreements with him, he did it with passion and fire and drive, and the value that he added to me is that it shaped how I think. Even your political opponent has value to offer you because he brought me clarity on issues. He made me think about issues, think about them deeper, think about them from different angles. He enabled me to be more nuanced, more critical with my thinking. He provided that value. He was the guy that was my litmus test on how much I was willing to go outside of an echo chamber and explore differing views, oppositional views. And that is truly where I agree with, the thing I agree with Charlie the most on. I can't remember what year he said this, but there's the video coming around where he's talking from one of his stands like he always did. And a lady comes up and he just confronts him like, why are you doing this? What are you looking to gain out of this? Like coming here and speaking in this oppositional way. And what I 1000% agree with Charlie, and I respect him for this view tremendously, I don't respect almost any of the others, is he said, so that the conversation could be had. Because the moment that we stop having the conversation, the moment that we stop trying to understand each other's side of things, the moment we aren't having this discord, we're not open-minded enough, we've become too polarized that we don't even want to hear what the other person has to say. The moment we get to that stage, that's when it leads to violence. That's when we really lose. And I 1000% fucking agree with him. Because whoever it was, and we still don't know, the first man that they arrested wasn't the shooter, but whoever it was that shot Charlie, that was a person who, like far too many people on the internet right now, were all too happily to throw any kind of nuance, even around an individual, just throw it out the window and just create a monstrous ideology and say that person is that monster, that boogeyman. I'm not seeing this person in any other light. I don't want to hear what they have to say. I don't want to hear who they are. I don't consider that they're a husband to a wife or father to children. I don't care in that belief that nobody deserves to be shot for their political beliefs. Whoever the shooter is, they didn't have that. And by mimicking some of the sentiment that many people are right now, you are no better. If you're out there calling for violence now, in reaction to this violence, then you are no better. I know some people might take issue with that because you believe that you have objective truth. I believe it. My truth is my truth because I kind of believe it objectively. That's the thing. We can always say, oh yeah, my truth is subjective. This is just my POV. But the thing with truths is, though we can, some of us acknowledge that they are subjective. It's just what my truth is. It feels objective to us. It feels objective. I look at how I view the political world and policy and issues, abortion and healthcare and war and violence and racial matters and sexual orientation matters. I look at that in opposition, Charlie, and I do believe mine is just objectively better and true and more moral, and that his was terrible. Even that statement of no one should be shot for their political views, that feels like an objective absolute to me. To me, that is objectively just fucking true. But to many other people, it's not. Charlie Kirk, to many people, was the villain. And to many other people, they were his hero. Your villain is somebody else's hero, and your heroes are somebody else's villain. And when you think about that, I mean, that's crazy. It's crazy. That is how complex and muddied and murky and complex and convoluted and mind fucking boggling the world is on all of these issues. And it's going to remain that way. That's not going to change anytime soon. Which, because that's not going to change, that's why we need to have core underlying principles to guide through that. And one of those is that we have freedom of speech and no one gets shot or killed for their political views. Even a neo-Nazi. Even a fucking neo-Nazi that stands on stage literally saying Adolf Hitler was the best, he was based, he needs to come back. Even that person doesn't deserve to be shot, because it's a standard, and it has to be the standard. It has to be the guardrail, like that labyrinth of political division and differing of opinions, and how extreme those differences are, and how extreme the different set of facts and information that we all operate under, of which there is a countless million. When you throw in the layers of conspiracy and hyperbole and twisting of facts, misrepresenting biases, that labyrinth is thick and confusing enough as it is, but there has to be guardrails. And if political violence isn't a guardrail, or being against it, if you take that off, then we're fucked. Why is Bo barking? We're fucked, guys. So I just wanted to throw that out there, because not enough people seem to be getting that right now, left or right. I know some right-wingers are going to say to that, no, fuck that, the time for your no political violence is gone. You contributed towards this, you and all your left-wing cronies, everyone who thought like you're all responsible. You said bad things about Charlie, you argued with him, you argued against his belief system. So what's the solution? What's the solution? That we surrender freedom of speech, or freedom of open and honest and at times confrontational discourse, but not confrontational with guns. No, confrontation with ideas. If I think that your idea is fucking stupid or evil, I would say your idea is fucking stupid and evil. And even now, with Charlie being shot, it doesn't change that we can still talk about who he was and what his beliefs were. Like, people come out and going absolutely crazy because some people say, Charlie didn't deserve to get shot, but this or but that. But he did say that gun deaths and gun violence was a necessary evil, and one that he was okay with happening. Like, to bring up those, because they are reality, they are fact. The reality of who he was. I mean, that's how he showed up. That was his job. That's how he was known. To not talk about someone within the context of how they were known, it's nonsensical. And there's like no layer to this. I understand the sensitivity of someone just dying, so it feels a kind of way to like criticize someone who's literally just died. But that's part of the ability to just have a non-hyperbolic, not overly sensitive ability to be a fucking adult in the world. Like, some people are so childish with this that they're even like blasting Central Comedy, because Charlie was very recently, I mean, like the last episode, South Park did a bit with Eric being Charlie Kirk, kind of taking the piss. And people are like, you need to pay for this. You need to pay for what you've done. You need to pay for what you've done. It's fucking satire. South Park rips everybody off. Even Charlie himself reacted to him being portrayed as Eric Cartman and getting taken the piss out. And he found it funny. He commented on it. He said it was great. Like, they picked up his mannerisms really well. The fact that he's a compulsive water drinker, that he always puts the microphone down. Like, we can still have the conversations. Like, I can say, right now, the thing I was going to say earlier is that, the craft that he had mastered, yes, he was a great speaker. Yes, he was an intelligent guy. He was, as South Park gave him the award for, he was a master debater. I can say that, but I can also say the way I think he was a master debater was actually very sly and devious. I've watched Charlie enough to know when he tells very well crafted fibs and lies, obfuscated many, many facts, misrepresented a lot of data, a lot of statistics, often used the Bible and Bible verses, also used very discreet, subtle, wordplay tricks to basically pen in and corner the person he was having a debate with, to pull random facts or ask questions that would sort of bedazzle people's senses. Like, master debaters, they're not all great at debating because they're just really, really fucking correct and right and good. A lot of debating is just about mental jujitsu, and he did a lot of that, and a lot of it was very devious. And there was a reason why what he was biggest known for was doing it on college campuses with kids essentially kids, young adults who, and this might sound insulting to young adults, but because they are, of course, some very, very intelligent, sensible, well-rounded ones. Two people that I really like to watch is Parker and Dean Withers. Don't agree with at all everything that they say, but Parker and Dean, I think they're like their 20s, but that's not the majority of people in their early 20s. So when you're going and you're basically, as a fully grown man, debating kids who are in education, who are still learning, like, their thoughts aren't that fully formed. They also don't do this for a job like you do, Charlie. So they're armed with all facts and statistics and data. Not everyone's a walking compendium and library. And yes, there's a lot of kids who are also just fucking stupid. They'll identify themselves as terms that they don't fully understand. They'll be dick riding like narratives that their mates have, and they just don't have a fully fleshed out, well-rounded perspective on things. And so you coming in, a professional guy whose job is to do that, he would obviously walk absolute fucking up and down their asses, make them look like absolute fools. In some cases, they were actually fools. But so many right-wingers watch that, and they're like, oh yeah, these fucking naive, ill-formed thought college kids, they are a representation of the left. And look, we're getting owned. So it just fed into more echo chamber, more bias, like, we're right. Look, this is what left people think, and look at Charlie Onham. But there's numerous other debates out there where Charlie went against very intelligent master debater lefties, and Charlie got absolutely fucking obliterated at times when he was actually having a debate with an actually competent opponent. So that's to say, yeah, I do think some of his methods were quite sly and devious. But on the flip side to that, not advocating now in Charlie's corner, like, education, universities, college campuses, this is a place for the sharing of ideas, to be challenged, to have your ideas and your thoughts scrutinized. And in that sense, everything that I said is complete horseshit, because Charlie was going there and forcing people to have their thoughts and their worldviews challenged, and that is always valuable. That should always be happening. The sign of any healthy civilization and society has always, now and historically, been when controversial and opposing ideas can be held in the public forum. That is the greatest sign of a healthy democracy in action. Even dating back as far as fucking China, its golden era, its age where science and poetry and trade and literature was at its peak. The golden era of China, it was golden because they would invite scientists and philosophers and different religions. They would come from all parts of the world. They'd come to the public forum and they would discuss. And the moment it turned into a dictatorship that burned that all to the ground, none of those individuals were allowed to come to that forum, and only one narrative, only one discourse was allowed. And too many people on the internet right now are advocating for that. And that's the thing I feel the most fucking pissed off with, because at the core of any true Westerner's value system should be that the privileges and the Western world that we have made, for all of its woes, for all of its ugly brutality that has got here, one of the things we've had is that we have that. We have freedom of discourse and ideas separate from any political violence. That is the one pillar of beauty that we live and stand by, and is the privilege that we all live under. And anyone who's willing to throw that away, I stand against you. I despise you. I think you're an absolute piece of shit. I think you are an enemy of democracy. I do think you are a threat now and going forward, threat to Western civilization. And depending on some of the other beliefs that you have around it, I will even extend as far as to think you're pretty goddamn evil. But even while I think all of that, I wish you nothing but health and well-being, and that you get to live free from suffering and free from a bullet going into your goddamn neck. That's the something that I will stand by. And if you don't stand by something, then you fall for everything. Or you fall for nothing. Stand for something or fall for everything. So, if you don't stand for something, you stand for nothing. I don't know. You know what the saying is. Anyway, guys, wild times. Truly wild times. I'd love to know what you think in the comment section below. And I don't really know how to sign this video out. So I'm just going to press the off button. I mean, shit. What else is there to say?